Okay, so let's talk about spoilers for Alien Romulus. Let's talk about the ending and everything we thought about it. You can check out our review if you don't want the spoilers, where we are spoiler free and we just talk about it. Quick little rundown here. I enjoyed the movie a lot. I know it has like a greatest hits feel to it with Alien and Aliens, but like I've said before, they had to do it. They had to Force Awakens it. Reignite the flame for the fans and give us something new, which is I think what Fede does at the end of this film, which we'll talk about in this video. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. We are on the road to 35,000 subscribers. Big goal for August. Let's get to it, but let's talk about Alien Romulus. Check out our website www.culturelixir.com as well as our Instagram at itsculturelixir. But let's start off with this film. This is Alien Romulus. It is set between the events of Alien in 1979 and Aliens in 1986. So right down that middle part right there, right after everything that happened with the Nostromo, with Ripley and all of that, and right before the events of Aliens. So we are following these young colonists who are trying to scavenge through this derelict space station, and they are going to face the xenomorph. So you have your character of Cailee Spaeny, who is Rain. You have your character of Andy, played by David Jonsson. You have Tyler, who is played by Archie Renaux. You have Kay, who is played by Isabela Merced. You have Jorn, who is played by Spike Fearn. Navarro, played by Aileen Wu. They are pretty much stuck on this colony, and in this colony you have to work, and after you get enough credits, time, whatever, then you're allowed to leave, and that's what Rain wants to do. So before we actually met Rain and her friends, we see at the beginning of the film that it showcases the Renaissance spaceship, which is the one that has both sides, which is Remus and Romulus. What we see is that they actually managed to retrieve this big sort of like rock, which is actually the xenomorph from 1979 Alien, and that was the one that Ripley actually defeated by throwing it out into deep space at the end. They thought the xenomorph was dead. Oh, it's not dead, and it actually goes on a rampage killing everybody. Note to self, do not pick up random stuff you find in space. But we see that the new xenomorph has managed to go around and lay eggs, create this ship into a hive of sorts, which we're going to find out in a bit. Not a good thing to go into the ship, but of course Rain and her friends did not know this at all. So the reason that they decide to go into this derelict space station in the first place is because they find out that they're never going to be allowed to leave the colony. They're going to have to work, and most of their parents are already dead from working. So do they really have any chance of escaping, right? Andy is the only one who is not human. They are actually an android who is played by David Jonsson, and he does a phenomenal job, honestly. Like I said in my review, David Jonsson and Cailee Spaeny shine so much here, and he is just incredible. Definitely check out Ryland if you haven't with David Jonsson. But we see that Tyler's plan here is for them to go up there and get these cryopods in order for them to be able to use it to travel to Ibaga, where they're finally going to be able to live their lives. But of course, one thing to note is Andy might not be able to come because synthetics aren't usually allowed to come into these places, right? So they eventually are able to go up there into the space station, but once they get up there, they realize they only have 36 hours before it hits the rings of a nearby planet. So they have to do all of this, get the cryo chambers and all of that, and get into them and go to Ibaga. But it's going to be hard, 36 hours. And then we have some surprise friends because, surprise, surprise, facehuggers and xenomorphs are on board as well. So the first things that they actually encounter are the facehuggers. We see them attack Jorn as well as Tyler. Eventually they are able to be set free after they change the module inside of Andy because he's an android, so he can kind of communicate with the ship, but he doesn't have all of the clearances. So what they're able to do is find a dead android, and then they're able to take the module off of him and put it into Andy, but this changes Andy as well. Nonetheless, Jorn and Tyler are safe now, but it looks like one of the facehuggers managed to escape, and it gets into Navarro and it just begins to choke her and it's covering her face. What we find out is that they shouldn't remove the face hugger because it's starting to choke her, and maybe the more they pull it, the more it's going to choke her. Andy then says that maybe the dead android might know what to do, so they bring it sort of back to life of sorts, and this is an android called Rook, who is actually being used with the voice and the face likeness of Ian Holm, who actually played the android Ash in the original Alien film. A big controversy for a lot of people. We're not talking about that here today. We have a whole video where we'll discuss that in this weekend, so stay tuned for that. But the android basically says that they need to be careful with that because it is going to choke her. They decide that the way to get it off of her, however, is maybe they should freeze its tail and then take it off, which does end up working, and Navarro seems to be okay for now. Turns out maybe not really. Rook even tells Andy that he needs to make a decision that's going to be best for everybody, even if it's a hard one. This pisses off Jorn because a couple of moments ago he had said how much he hated synthetics because synthetic had made a choice to sacrifice his mother in order to save others, because the thing was like sacrifice like 3 people for like 20 or 40 people's lives. So the androids just make whatever's logical. They don't really take feelings into account. And so we know what's going on here now. We know Navarro has something inside of her. The Facehugger was able to implant or impregnate, as they do, the host, and now something's going to come out of here. Andy tries to stop this with Rain and Tyler left behind as Jorn and Navarro try to get away from Andy and get back into the ship to go back to the colony. Kay is actually still on that ship because she wasn't really able to go forward with them because it turns out that she's pregnant, but nobody knows except Rain. We see as Andy gets locked out of the chamber and Jorn and Navarro go in there with Kay, and then things just begin to get chaotic. So what happens next is from the trailer where we see something burst out of Navarro's chest and Kay gets knocked out, as well as the ship just goes into a frenzy when she's like kicking all of the controls and all of that. And this causes the ship to move in a way now where it's going to hit the rings in the asteroid belt a lot sooner. Like they only have 40 minutes instead of 36 hours to get it together. And we see that everybody just gets separated. So now we have Navarro dead. That's our first kill right there. Should we do kill count? That'd be kind of fun to talk about what exactly happened here, right? But we see next is the rest of the crew get picked off. We see Jorn get killed by an adult xenomorph while he's trying to take it out with like this taser of sorts. Andy has a new directive, and that is to retrieve these samples that they were working on in this ship. Through the android, as well as some of the things that Andy knows, is that the people on the Romulus were experimenting on xenomorphs, collecting right from the beginning and trying to figure out more about how they worked. Of course, this was Weyland-Yutani's goal from the beginning. We remember it from Prometheus. They were trying to find out how to be immortal and all of that. And so they were experimenting on these xenomorphs, trying to harness their genetic adaptability because they would see how much they were able to endure and survive as well, almost implying that the xenomorphs can kind of be immortal in a way as well. And so now Andy, once he got that new module in him, he now was serving the company. Beforehand, he was going to do what's best for Rain. Now it's doing what's best for company interest. And right now, the interest of the company is for Andy to get these vials that they were working on, the scientists that actually died. Now Andy's directive is to do what's best for the company, and what's best for the company is to take what these scientists were experimenting on and take it back so that the company can retrieve them. Of course, this means if he has to help Rain and Tyler, he will, because if they help him, then he'll be able to get them to wherever they need to go and do whatever, and he will stay behind with the company now. This is easier said than done, however, because they still have the xenomorphs trying to get them. There's a point in the film where Kay and Tyler and Rain meet up again, but they're separated by a door. The only one that can open that door, however, because they have the clearance to do so, is going to be Andy, and he decides not to because he sees a xenomorph behind her, and you know he's gonna do whatever it takes to serve the company, and having the xenomorph attack them might not be the best thing to do. And we see the xenomorph end up taking Kay as Rain and Tyler cry on, and Rain just feels like she doesn't know who this Andy is anymore, because it's clearly not Andy because of the new module in him. It's more of Rook who is taking over now. As they eventually get deeper into the ship and try to find a way out, they see there is a heavier infestation than they could have ever thought, and we see that they actually find Kay, who is still not dead but is on the verge of being used as a harvesting sort of bag as the xenomorphs use humans. They manage to get her down and try to go to the elevator to escape, but that's when a xenomorph comes out and tries to attack Rain. Tyler gets right in front of it, sacrificing himself. He then gets killed. Rain and Kay go to the elevator, but we don't see Andy coming anytime soon as he is attacked by a xenomorph as well. Rain is leaving now with Kay back to the ship, but then she decides to go back for Andy. She gives her the vials of black goo that were retrieved by Andy for the company, tells her not to use it because she doesn't need it and doesn't know what can happen. But as we see, once Rain leaves, Kay, who is pretty much badly injured right now, decides to use it because she's probably thinking, you know, I'm injured, I can fall or something and the Facehugger can get me. No, I'm going to take this and get better and, you know, for the most part, she does at first. Rain go back for Andy, and she's able to help him get back up, but then they're caught between all of these xenomorphs coming at them, and we hear Rook tell them that he doesn't need them anymore, and he's going to get Kay out of there and take the goo back to the company, and they can just stay there. And we see as Rook is trying to convince Kay to do this, but Kay, she's not gonna do it. She's gonna wait for Rain. So Rook pretty much has been playing everybody. He just wants to do what's best for the company. He doesn't care who gets sacrificed. His thing is just logic, no feelings or anything like that. Now, the only way that Rain and Andy can get out of this now is Rain thinks of an idea that they will do zero gravity, and then she'll be able to shoot the aliens so the acid goes everywhere and it doesn't go to the bottom, and that way there's not like an air breach or anything like that, so the goo will just be everywhere. But once she does this, however, there's goo everywhere and they still have to navigate through it. One of the best scenes, honestly, with all that acid and everything. It felt super dope, just like Dead Space. And I said it, Fede Álvarez needs to do Dead Space today. But we see as they manage to get back to the elevator, however, there is still a xenomorph that is going after them. As we see them go up with the zero gravity, we see that the gravity is going to be turned back on. Andy is able to hold on to something, but we see that Rain isn't, and we see her free fall when the gravity comes back on. But the xenomorph saves her. I say quote unquote save her because the xenomorph just wants to use her to harvest and be like a body bag basically. But then we see Andy come to the rescue, shooting down the xenomorph, and it was just such an amazing sight to see, and gave the best pop for a laugh when he said, "Get away from her, you bitch." So really love that from Andy right there. They put Kay into a cryo chamber, and Andy's going to be taken with them now. And just before Rain goes into her cryo chamber, there's an alert coming from Kay's, and when she opens it, she sees that Kay is giving birth, and it's like a alien mixed with a human. It's a xenomorph like egg, but a human head's there, and it was just so creepy. Almost looked like an engineer of sorts, and I was like, what in the splice is this? And we eventually see that Rain runs to try and get something to freeze it, so to kill it pretty much. But by the time she comes back, the acid from the egg has made the egg fall down into the cargo area of the ship, and she has to go down there and try to figure out what it is and get rid of it. By the time she gets down there, however, it seems to have been gone, and it looks like it's like a humanoid xenomorph of sorts as it goes back up to Kay, and it looks like it's trying to feed off of her. It ends up eating her. Like, that's what it looks like, almost like a vampire of sorts. Andy tries to save Kay, but is eventually taken out by the new xenomorph human, whatever they're gonna call it, Chimera. Rain tries to freeze the thing, but the tank she's using falls and blows up, causing all of this like cold gas, air, whatever, to come through the ship, and we see that the temperature is going down. Rain needs to get into a space suit now in order to survive, and she decides the only way to survive this is to launch it into space. Eventually, she's able to get her and Andy to safety, and now the creature has been thrown into space, and we see that her and Andy are going to be going to Ivaga now. Rain vows to Andy that she will fix him once they get back, and that she's never going to let him go, and we see that they are now going to go to Ivaga, as she leaves a log behind. If she makes it or not, she doesn't know, is what she says, but we shall see as the credits start to roll. So pretty much in a nutshell, what happened here is at the beginning of the film, the crew that we saw capture that giant rock, they actually captured the xenomorph from the first Alien film. It came back to life, killed everybody. They managed to get it down, but we actually saw they created a nest that was big enough for them to make more xenomorphs. That's why we saw a ton of them by the end of the film. And the whole premise of this ship here, the Renaissance, it was split into two parts, Remus and Romulus, was that they wanted to get the alien biles and like study them in order to make Prometheus 5, this genetic elixir they would use on humans in order to make them just as strong as the xenomorphs, because they are finding out that xenomorphs might just be close to immortal, and they wanted the humans to not die while they were working in the space colonies. We know they were dying. That's something that Rain and her friends said, that a lot of their family had died because of lung disease and all of that from the mines. So we know that Weyland-Yutani just wanted to make these humans live longer so they can work longer and give them more profits. They themselves would live longer, of course, as well. Now, the only downside of this was, as we saw with the rat, that once you took the serum, it wasn't long before you yourself sprouted a xenomorph or had a weird combination of it. So what we saw happen to Kay was she took this without knowing the consequences. She was pregnant, and so the baby took that and became a hybrid xenomorph human, which then was the one that was attacking them at the the end. But however, we saw that it ultimately killed Kay once it was born, but we saw that Cailee's character of Rain was able to take it out, and now it's floating in space and could probably be alive, just as the xenomorph was still alive all those years when the Renaissance came in contact with it. Now we have Cailee Spaegy's Rain and David Jonsson's Andy heading to Ivaga, not knowing if they're going to make it too. That's what Rain says too. But we also have this hybrid xenomorph floating in space. One of the big things we are wondering now is, does this xenomorph hybrid chimera, whatever you want to call it, come back? I feel like we could definitely see something like that happen. We saw that the xenomorph from the first Alien managed to live in time for the Renaissance to come and get it at the beginning of Romulus, so that definitely could mean that we could see this one survive, and who knows what dangers it could bring to the future, right? I'm very interested in that as well, and I thought that that was such a cool way to sort of introduce these hybrids now and really make it much more tense. Imagine a xenomorph and a human combined. I think that's definitely going to be an interesting thing to really look into the next films. And you know, I was wondering what exactly was going to happen to Kay. At first I thought that maybe it was just going to be like another xenomorph came out, but I was very creeped out with what actually did come out. So one of the things too that was talked about was Ian Holm being back in this, which was a big thing, a big controversy, since Ian Holm sadly passed away in 2020. But he did play Ash, which was one of the synthetics in the Alien franchise. And I just feel like maybe their way of explaining it is, since Ash's whole directive and command was to pretty much advance Wayland and all of that, they made another one in the likes of Ash, since he pretty much meets his end at the end of Alien. So I think that's why they decided to go with Rook looking the same and being the synthetic science officer for the Renaissance spaceship. Now the directive here was to retrieve xenomorphs in order to develop Prometheus 5, which of course would be used to advance human evolution, make them stronger to survive in space, and create immunity in order for the company to have like workers forever, right? They wanted these workers to work in the mines, but they were dying from lung disease, and so that was the big thing. They wanted to make a serum that would help them live forever pretty much, and work forever too at the same time. It wasn't no utopia or anything that they were trying to do. So I thought that that was pretty interesting there, that this is more corporate greed than them trying to advance humanity for anything, right? And I think Andy's whole turn as well, when he had Rick's module in him, was making him act like Rook, because Rook was not above sacrificing Rain or anybody. They wanted just to have this experimental research delivered to the company because they were a company person, man, whatever, robot. And it's exactly how Andy was behaving for like half of the movie, because he had the module in him. Now the Prometheus 5 is what Kay ended up injecting herself, because she didn't know the full capabilities. Only we as the audience knew, because we saw what happened to the rat that had taken it. This is what was responsible for making the xenomorph hybrid, because Kay had been pregnant, and so once she got this in her, it got into the baby as well. And of course, that is a callback to the prequel Prometheus, which I think is the best film in the Alien franchise. Say what you will. You can hate it, you can love it, but that's how I feel. So I really liked how they established the whole synthetic and human thing. I think that's something that should definitely be explored in future films. I thought that as a different approach than what we've seen before, and really loved that aspect of it. I also really enjoy the whole thing with the hybrids now, because I think it adds an interesting layer to the film now, that it's not just the xenomorphs. Like, I know we love the xenomorphs and all, but I really loved in Prometheus that they weren't really the big bad of it all, right? Like, there's different aspects to this world, and I think there's just so much that they can explore as well. I'm very curious to see if they continue the franchise once Rain and Andy arrive to Ivaga. How would that be? What's going to be there? What is the whole thing with other places in this universe, and how they deal with what's going on here? I think that's definitely something that could be interesting to see. Some people are also talking about how this is a feel like Alien Isolation, and I would definitely love to see them putting aspects from the video games as well as the comic books, which were very popular, into upcoming films as well. And I think what's really interesting is Rook being this company person, thinking though, however, they were doing something that's greater for humanity, but really was just greater for Weyland-Yutani only. I always think the Alien films have been about corporate greed and how corporations really just go through and suck the life out of everything. That they were willing to sacrifice whoever just to capture the xenomorphs and study them, just because they wanted humans to live longer and be stronger so that they could work more for them and give more and all of that. Not really the best interest of humanity. humanity, but just of Weyland-Yutani. A very good film, honestly. I really enjoyed it. So honestly, I'd be open to seeing this hybrid if it does survive. I feel like the hybrid survived. There's just no way that it's already gone, and we could definitely see a new life form of sorts. I think that would be interesting take right there. Where does this film go next, though? That's the big question. So I think that in the way that the timelines are set up, by the time they reach Ivaga, we're almost close to Aliens when that took place. And then, of course, Resurrection took place like 200 years after the first film. So I don't know where they would want to go, like explore everything right after Alien and before Resurrections. Like that chunk could be something they explore, and maybe we showcase how other people deal with it as well. I think Fede Álvarez has a clear vision, and I hope he's able to put it out to work. I think the first 2/3 of this film were definitely studio what they wanted, what they felt that people wanted as well for an Alien film, and the third act is definitely what Fede feels he could take this film into in its next direction, and we'll see. I'm okay with Fede taking reign of the franchise. I really enjoyed the film. I think that this is definitely a very, very good sci-fi flick, and I loved it. So let me know what you think about it. Follow for more on things you love. 35,000 subscribers is the goal. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, like all that good stuff. www.cultureelixir.com is our website, as well as our Instagram is @itscultureelixir. I'll see all of you next time. Stay safe, stay positive.